Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Non-Monog Dialogues. I'm Michelle, Polyamorous while Asian, and our wonderful guest today is Sydney Rae Chin. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I know that we've been trying to schedule this since March or something like that. I don't even know.
Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm really excited to, talk about your story, learn more. Yeah, and would you like to talk about like a little bit more of like what you do and your work?
My name is Sydney Rae Chin. I use she, her pronouns. I am a survivor edu-guide. And so what that means is that I'm an educator slash a coach, but I don't like the word coach because it's just been like so overused by white women who just don't know what the hell they're talking about and is very like, so that's why I don't use the word coach. I empower Pan-Asian, non-cis men survivors of sexual and intimate partner violence to reclaim their wholeness and sensuality. And then I also do education side, mostly stemming from my own experiences as an East Asian survivor of sexual and intimate partner violence, so educating from that lens. And then I dabble a little bit in Title IX consultancy. And I have a lot of thoughts on Title IX. There just needs to be more options beyond reporting. And so I talk a little bit about transform justice. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in it, but I am a student in transform justice. So I like to talk about that too on my Patreon and anywhere else that's not getting censored.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, just working around these social media overlords and their advertiser-friendly content.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, so let's just dive into your origin story. So take us back to the beginning of your polyam origin story.
So it was, oh right, it was with my ex-boyfriend 2 years ago. I was in a monogamish-ish relationship, except there's definitely more monogamy, but there was an ish to it because of the fact that my ex-boyfriend is also a bisexual person of color. We were living in different parts of the world. He was living in Hong Kong. I was living here. I mean, I still live here, but um, we were living in different parts of the world. So obviously, we did not get to see each other that much. And so it was through that. I also almost was engaged to my ex-boyfriend. There's a lot there to unpack. But yeah, that's when I began to realize when I was in that relationship, because it was just like, even though we're both queer, now looking back, I'm like, oh, this was the most heteronormative relationship that I was ever in. And it was definitely like, we both were definitely trying to subscribe ourselves to like gender roles and what we think like a cis het, even though neither of us are heterosexual, couple or like relationship should be like. So I feel like there was also a lot of that restriction. And then like both of us didn't unpack our religious upbringings because I'm Chinese Catholic or I grew up Chinese Catholic. I'm not Chinese Catholic anymore to be clear about that. I grew up Chinese Catholic, so there's obviously a lot of parody culture and just like a lot of obviously compulsory monogamy in Catholicism. And then you add the Chinese on top and it's just like double monogamy, double compulsoriness,
Lots of
double
questions.
heteronormativity. So I was really stuck in that, like, oh, I have to be something for someone else type of thing. And honestly, the breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me because I would not be the sex educator that I am today. Before I thought that I wanted to be in marketing or like I had to be in marketing because of like, oh, this is what my partner expects me to do. But then after the breakup, it literally led me to the path where I'm talking to you right now here on Zoom.
I feel like I feel you there with the whole like our ex partners leading us down a certain path, especially with regard to non-monogamy, and it's like, maybe a little worse for wear in some parts, but we're here.
We are here, yeah. Or like now looking back, I remember this one particular moment. I was still in school and he was 4 years out of school because my ex-boyfriend's 4 years older than me. It was senior year. I think it was like, oh, it was Valentine's Day weekend. So I was spending it with my friends, right? Because obviously my partner's across the sea, can't see him because I don't have money because I'm a student. And I remember this one weekend where I just pretended to be single essentially because I wanted to get free drinks from people. And I'm like, now I look back and I'm like, it's funny, but also I'm like, wait, Sydney, did you not know that you were like maybe not monogamous?
my God, I love that. So do you remember in particular certain steps that led you to come across formal non-monogamy? Because I know, like for me, I had a lot of inklings when I was growing up that was like, maybe the monogamy thing isn't working, but like I had no idea there were communities. I had no idea what the vocabulary was. When did you encounter polyamorous like community or resources or anything like that?
When I started to become a sex educator, to be honest. Like, so that was last year. I had like the epiphany that, oh, wait, maybe I'm not monogamous. Maybe
Mm,
that's why it didn't work with my ex-boyfriend, because he's super monogamous and I'm just not. I started following Haley Hansen Uncensored,
mm,
Haley's Instagram, and they're friends with the growth arc, or I had seen the growth arc following Haley too. So I think I started following the growth arc, and then I was like, wait, this person has a lot of great non-monogamy tips. I think this is me. And then I think I started following you, and then I was also following Jada because I had like connected with Jada somehow. And then I was like, wait, there's polyamorous Asian people? So does that mean that I can be polyamorous? Ooh, maybe that's me. And I was
mm.
still trying to like figure out what I wanted to do in the sexuality field at the time too. And I think that also helped me with like the professional part, but also realizing, wait, I think I have these experiences that all these people are talking about. Oh, wait, I think this is me.
Oh, it's amazing. That's amazing. Like, yeah, like we can of course like critique spaces like Instagram and stuff for, you know, their censorship and particularly of like, you know, like women of color, queer women of color, you know, like even like sex workers and stuff. But then yeah, there are these like little silver linings, I guess, little pockets of information and connection that like actually happen. And so yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, like the people that you named, I love them. I love their content. So let's take it back to your upbringing with regard to being raised like Chinese Catholic. And you know, you mentioned purity culture and whatnot. And of course, I often tell people that like even just raised in our society, we have like decades of mononormative programming to unpack. And then I can only imagine being raised Chinese Catholic that yeah, there's layers layers to that programming. So if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I'm trying to like remember if there's any like, oh, okay, well, in church, this is just like continuous memories that I think about sometimes. I remember in church that I would always be bored because I felt like I never fit in. And I think it was also because of the bisexuality that I like suspected at an early age. Oh, I don't think I'm straight. But also, I like men. So does that make me straight? It was like a continuous thought that I had, especially like in eighth grade. And that's when I started distancing myself from the church because I realized that, well, there's a lot wrong with the church. I mean, covering up child sex abuse among, what's the thing where, oh, extortion or whatever. I don't know. Something with money, corruption with money. There's a lot of reasons that I don't go to church anymore. Yeah, I just remember grown up and like my parents are really really devout and I love them. I just don't agree with them on religion. They sent me to Sunday school, so we would go every Sunday to like read whatever scripture or whatever. And I remember it being really really heteronormative because it's the church. And also like about one man one woman for like the rest of your life forever type of thing. And I remember also from an early age that I never really wanted to get married. I was like, I'll just be like a spinster the rest of my life or whatever. And just like have a child on my own. Like I always thought that up until I met my like first love. But like before then, I was like, oh, I'll just be single the rest of my life. It's fine. I have my friend. And I think that's also like an inkling moment of like, oh, the fact that I didn't really care about marriage at a young age, that I was like, marriage, not for me. I'm like, now I see that as like a moment of, oh yeah, that's part of non-monogamy. And like getting away from the relationship escalator.
Yeah, from a young age, I think I also had this realization around of like, well, if people do really love each other, you know, like why do you have to get married? You know, like it just all this pressure. And especially I think the culture around marriage where it's like spend a crap ton of money, invite a whole bunch of people, make a huge spectacle out of it. And it's like, I love a good party. I love a good reason to celebrate and stuff, but this just seems like it feeds into probably like classism and capitalism and
Yeah.
all of these like displays of wealth and abundance. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, if you're gonna stick around with someone forever, like why do you have to get married?
Yeah. I remember growing up also in church that like it was always like white men or just men, like cishet men telling me what to do, and that always rubbed me the wrong way. And like for context, I was really lucky to go to a private Quaker school, and so when I started going to Quaker school, I realized, oh, Catholicism is really fucked up. Quakerism is a little better. It's a little better because there's no hierarchy, and I think I like that. And now I'm like, now in this moment, I'm literally thinking, oh, wait, this connects back to non-monogamy and the reasons why I don't like Catholicism and don't really resonate with it, because it has this like very, everything has to be in this way, X, Y, Z, this path. You have to do X, Y, Z to like get to God, and also like be close to God or whatever. Like be a good Catholic to like, and also there's just so much parody culture on like women within the church, like telling people what to do with their bodies, which I'm like, that also rubbed me the wrong way because I'm like, don't tell me what to do with my body. Also, y'all are all cishet men.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you telling me what to do with my body? And I think that also has influenced a lot of my like sexuality career and how I sometimes talk about my Catholic or like how I grew up Chinese Catholic, because it connects to all the shame that I had coming out as a survivor of sexual and intimate partner violence too. But also just coming out as polyamorous and also bisexual and all these other things in general, because the church misuses the Bible. Because I think the Bible as it's in itself is like, I mean, I haven't read it in years, but I think there's like good lessons. I just think that people misconstrue it to their own agenda, and that doesn't really fuck, I don't really fuck with that. That the fact that the church is manipulating and using all this money to like funnel such an agenda, like no, that's not that's not what Catholicism is about. Even though I'm not.
Oh God, like I really only have like a kind of outsider's perspective because yeah, I wasn't really raised with any religion. And so with regard to unpacking shame, that must be like a huge one. You know, even with therapy and stuff, it's like this is definitely a lifelong journey that like therapy helps, but it's gonna take me probably the rest of my life to feel okay about. So what has your journey been like? What has that process been like, kind of unpacking?
I feel like I'm constantly healing. Like I hate the honestly misconception. I'm gonna call it a misconception. Misconception that like, oh, you're just healed. Like recovery is 100%, and I'm like, that's not. No, after trauma, you're totally a different person, and you're not gonna be the same person that you were before the trauma. That's just like fact. And also like, because I believe brain chemistry, at least my therapist has mentioned that your brain chemistry changes after trauma. And so I think that I will always, like you mentioned, I will always be like learning something more about my shame or like healing from different aspects of myself. Literally the other day I like, I mean, I mentioned this on my Instagram, but I'll like dive into it a little more here. I started listening to Olivia Rodrigo's album and grieving for the person I was 2 years ago and the person that I was in that relationship with my ex-boyfriend, where I was like, I don't know why I'm laughing, but I guess it's uncomfortable. Where I was constricted into monogamy and into these all these gender roles that just don't resonate with me and don't align with me. And I feel like people don't talk about that because they always talk about like the recovery and like how everyone's 100, supposedly 100% you're recovered. And like I don't know, I just don't like that concept because it's so binary too, that like, oh, you're either in distraught or just like 100% recovered. But like what if you're both? You can be both. You can be both. You can have so much joy but also be in so much grief too, and that's totally valid. And I think I wish people in society would talk about that more, other than, oh, you're 100% recovered or you're just not healed at all. Like no, you can be both, and you can just sit in that.
Yes, exactly. I really like that you say that. I feel like there is a lot of black and white thinking and a lot of kind of perfectionism and like right, if you don't reach this certain threshold, you're kind of not good enough, you're not working hard enough, you're just not doing it right. When the reality is if you experience trauma, like that's not going to go away overnight or just through like a year or two of therapy or whatnot. And everyone's timeline is different too. So something that I've heard a lot of people talk about is how non-monogamy, like practicing non-monogamy specifically, has been very beneficial in their own healing process. Like I've found that non-monogamy and exploring, alternatives to the relationship escalator and whatnot, like that's been fairly liberating. And I think that's contributed to my continual healing process. Do you feel like learning more about non-monogamy and practicing non-monogamy more and pursuing that more has aided in your healing process specifically?
I think so, especially like around boundary work, because in ethical non-monogamy and polyamory, you need so much boundary work, and also everyone in the different like connections, whatever that is, and whatever the configuration looks for different people. I feel like need to have their own set of like strong boundaries and like know like, okay, does this feel good or whatever in terms of their boundaries. And I think that learning about non-monogamy has helped me create better boundaries for myself, where it strengthens my friendships and like I let people know like, hey, this is where I'm at. I can't do anything for you today because I don't have spoons. I think non-monogamy is really helpful in that, and learning about it, because you get to learn about your own needs. And that's not something that generally in society that we talk about, but especially like as queer women of color, we definitely don't talk about that either. And it's not promoted as a gendered expectation for a queer woman of color to like have our needs met and for people to like respect our boundaries, because especially white people, but also like cishet men of color in particular, like to trample, especially on queer women's boundaries, because apparently we're just here for emotional free labor. Apparently, according to some folks.
Yeah, speaking like within the United States too, and like all of this, all these stereotypes and a lot of the kind of narrative around like Asian women specifically too. And we have things like, like Madame Butterfly and all of these narratives and stories, like, yeah, how that directly leads to, like violence against us. Yeah, a lot of people like discount it as in like, oh, we're too sensitive, or oh, it's not really that big of a deal, it's not that widespread, it's just maybe individual acts or whatever. But like, no, like it really shapes cultural understanding of like, when they see like a face like ours or something, they already have all these projections of what we might be like and how potentially be taken advantage of.
Without a doubt. And also even like Asian men within our communities, particularly like cis het men. It's funny how after the Atlanta, well, ironic, not funny, ironic after the Atlanta shooting, that there were all these East Asian, in particular, I'm going to call out East Asian men because seen a lot more cringe from East Asian men than other Asian men within Asian communities who were like, oh, my sister, my whatever. I'm like, I don't care about your feelings. I get that you have like sisters and moms or something, but also just like, you can just shut up and not say anything and just amplify people who know what we're talking about, and amplify the sex educators and the survivors in your community instead of saying, oh, this is how I feel. Like, no, I really don't give a fuck how you feel. You should be checking in on the women and the non-cis men in your life to see how they feel. And I don't know, throw them money, give them money, take care of them. I saw so many East Asian cishet men on social media do that. And I'm just like, why? And then also these are the same men that are like protecting abusers, and the same men that are also like buddies with rapists. So I'm just like, how can you protect me if you're not calling out your friend? Maybe you should call out your friend first and shut up.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I feel like, once upon a time, I followed like subtle Asian traits and, a couple of the offshoots and stuff, and then realized like, oh man, there's a lot of conservative or reactionary bullshit on those pages, a lot of toxic masculinity, and then like with the certain like Asian flavors of toxic masculinity. And I was like, wow, this is too many boba memes, too many too many reactionary politics here.
Yeah, I was in like one of the offshoots for the relationship one, and oh my
Oh.
god, as a sex educator, I was like, there's so much cringe in the advice given here. Why are people giving advice when they should not, like when they don't know what they're talking about? And also their advice is rooted from like a place of like horophobia and all these other phobias that I'm like, And that's why I like left the group recently because I was like, no, this is not the place for me. This is too heteronormative. It's too upholding these toxic masculine things because I had called out something with East Asian men in particular. Like it was about, oh, should you judge someone for sleeping with people? And I'm like, no, because STIs in general don't correlate with the number of people that you sleep with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know why people are making this assumption that like, and also like people with STIs have lives too. Just look on IG. There's so many STI educators that are super awesome that are talking about like the stigmas and stuff. Why are we stigmatizing STIs more and implicating that people are dirty for having STIs or sleeping with X amount of people?
Right. The stigma around it is like, oh God, it's almost like in some cases we're still in like the 1980s or something, and just the lack of education, the inadequacies of public sex education, which like we almost might as well not have sex education because of how bad it is.
Yeah.
Um, so how would you describe your relationship structure or style?
I think right now that's something I'm still exploring. I don't really, as a sexuality professional, I keep my dating life off of my business page because a lot of my past partners have been very private about their social media, so I respect that boundary. In general, something that I'm exploring or at least looking into and want to learn more about is like open relationships versus like what it means to be in a polycule and everything. I think it's still something that I'm exploring because I'm so used to monogamy and it's something that I like. Honestly, I'm still unlearning monogamy because like I'm very used to it. And also with the pandemic, I'm like, oh, being in a relationship with one person is like enough right now. Like interacting with a lot of people, but it's definitely something that I like want to explore more in the future in terms of like what relationship structure will work best for me and how does that feel. But generally, something that I have been thinking about in my head is like having an anchor partner, anchor slash nesting partner, and then having a partner outside of that that I don't necessarily nest with, but still like have as much love and equal connection and everything. But yeah, I haven't really thought about that only because like COVID made me like, I want to only talk to very few people.
Yeah, yeah, right. COVID really did put a put a halt to a lot of exploration. So what do you feel like so far? Because you mentioned boundaries, like learning about boundaries, and I know that it's like kind of a stereotype with non-monogamy that we always talk the shit out of our relationships and we just talk, but it's true. What other kind of lessons do you feel like have been the most impactful that you've learned so far?
I think not being afraid to have those conversations with partners or like people that you're interested in about non-monogamy. I won't go into much detail because private life, but like I did have a conversation recently and it helped me learn more about myself from having that conversation and also helped me learn more about the person that I'm partnered with when I had that conversation with them. Well, again, won't go into details. That's why I'm like super vague. I'm like, how much of my head do I want to reveal about my personal life? Even though I'm a sexuality professional, some of us just don't like to talk about our personal lives.
Oh yeah, that's totally fair having that boundary because I know there are like icky people there who are like, oh, just because they talk about sex and stuff and sexuality, like they're just super open about everything. And then I know they like really are invasive with regard to boundaries and stuff. So like totally understand and totally a-okay with that.
I think something that I'm learning is to learn to have these conversations because I think also being an abuse survivor and surviving intimate partner violence and sexual violence has also made me like afraid to have these hard conversations, even though I know that I'll be safe with my partner when I have these conversations. And I know that my partner won't like react in like a negative way, but like in my head, it's also like I'm learning that I don't have to do that anymore, which is like, and I think that sometimes makes at least having those conversations harder for me as an abuse survivor who is polyamorous because it's like in my head, like I'll talk about my ex-boyfriend because I'm fine with like that. Um, but when we would talk about non-monogamy with my ex-boyfriend, he would like tell me that I was polyamorous, and I didn't even know that I was polyamorous back then, and like reasons why it wouldn't work, or like, oh, that I'm fine with XYZ, and then clearly his face was showing that he was not fine with it. So I think I still have a lot of that ingrained in me, and that's why it's sometimes scary to have these conversations, even with someone that you deeply, deeply trust and someone that you deeply, deeply care about and love. It's really hard to have those conversations because, like, in the back of my head, the little, like, Six Flags man, a little old man from Six Flags is like, oh, it's gonna go wrong. Like that little voice in the back of my head. I don't know why I'm imagining him as the like old man from Six Flags, but it's like, oh no, it's not safe. Like that's what I hear in my head before these conversations, even though those two relationships are very, very different relationship spaces that I was in or that I am in versus was in before.
That is an interesting, a funny image. Like, cause yeah, now I'm thinking of like that Six Flags guy, Raven the wet red flags. Yeah. Yeah, that's relatable. Cause yeah, oh, actually having like healthy relationships after experiencing trauma. Wow.
Yeah. Yep, I had a whole breakdown about having about being in a different place than I was like 2 years ago, because now I'm in a happy, healthy place where I'm like happy with myself, like as an individual, but also like happy in partnership too, and like in a healthy partnership. Whereas like before I didn't even have that. And so like now I have the capacity, which is exciting, to explore non-monogamy and to explore polyamory for myself. And also something that I realize now looking back about my polyamory and that I've learned about myself, I think in 2020 in particular, but also some of 2021, is that part of my polyamory has always been having very deep friendships and realizing that, oh, that's part of it. Doesn't have to be like you have to have like a girlfriend or another partner besides like your anchor or nesting partner. That's like the structure that you're in. I realize in having deep friendships where I go on friend dates with my friends because I fucking love them is part of my polyamory. And I think that's also a reason why I've also in the past have slept with many of my friends, because I'm like, well, I mean, we're friends, so I mean, right, this is just like another level of friendship, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that because I feel very similarly where it's like really, yeah, the lines between what like a friend is versus what a like partner is just really has blurred because yeah, I've had friends who have become partners or I have like I've gone on dates where it's like, oh, maybe it starts off more like hot and heavy and then we just text a lot now and that's really cool for us and I love that. Like I almost can't remember what it was like to have that delineation. Like I still get inklings of it, but it just feels much more fluid these days and kind of releasing myself from kind of expectation of like, okay, the relationship has to look this specific way in order for it to work. And so I think this is like a good, like it's an interesting topic to bring up, like with regard to hookup culture. Like I know you
Oh,
have thoughts. I know you have thoughts. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think hookup culture is great, and also I think that's how I realized now looking back and reflecting. Now that I'm 20, I literally turned 24 on Wednesday. It was great. Spent the day with one of my best friends. It was really, really awesome. Now looking back on like hookups, I used to hook up a lot in college. I'm not ashamed to say that. I've like slept with 46 people. Woo me. And I remember thinking that, oh, this is just a thing people do in college. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, that was literally part of my polyamory. Cause like I remember this once, it was the summer before I went abroad to Hong Kong and the summer before I like met my first love. I had a friend with benefits that I was like hooking up with on daily. I still talk to this person. He's great. Um, Shout out to him. He introduced me to EDM, so that's now I'm into music festivals because of him. Great friendship. We still talk. And then I have like a secondary like hookup partner that like I don't talk to anymore, but like he was fun to be around. And then there was also like a friend that I like hooked up with once because there was this was one summer day that like he like helped me find like 5 other people to hook up with. I don't know why. We were hanging out or whatever. And then we ended up hooking up. And I think that a lot of like hookup cultures look down upon because of monogamy. Now that I look back, I'm like, oh, it's because of monogamy, duh. But also at the same time, it was like the most liberating summer that I had in 2018, where I was just like sleeping with a lot of people. And it was like, okay, this is fun. And then like going out with my friends and all. But yeah, I just remember that. And for a while, I guess I just thought hookups were part of like college experience, which I think it is to an extent. I'm not sure how much during COVID, to be honest, now for like college students now. But back in the day, before the pandemic, I think that it also connects to like the parody culture aspect about why people are so like, ugh, hookup culture, so bad. Because I remember seeing like magazines as a teen about how hookup culture was bad or something in like 17 magazine or like Teen Vogue or one of those magazines about like hookup culture is so bad, it's ruining relationships. When actually, honestly, when I was hooking up with a bunch of people in 2018, it was liberating for me. And also, I think it was possibly liberating and fun for them too. And I'm still friends with some of these people. Like I still text them every now and then. And like we give advice to each other about like well, not necessarily partners, but like dating and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? And hookup culture is seen as immature. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
it's what you do maybe, like you shouldn't do it, but it's what you do maybe before you like settle down and become an adult and become mature and realize that like monogamy is the one right way and all that. And like, yeah, no self-respecting person would like give themselves like that, all that weird language about like giving themselves up to all these people or whatnot. And it's like, yeah, it's such a shame because right, like you're describing incredibly liberating experience. Had a fun time. You still have these connections from then. It's like,
Later, I'm still talking to some of these people, and like I literally had my friend that was my friends with benefits text me the other day and was like, "Hey, can you give me advice on this?" I'm like, "Okay," because they also know that I'm a sex educator now, so I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about this." Yeah, a lot of the friends that I've like either sexted in the past or hooked up with, like I talk to them every now and then. I don't talk to them as much as I used to because the pandemic kind of zilched the the socializing part of my brain, but I still talk to them every now and then. And also, I just think that it's a part of my friendship to like, okay, yeah, I slept with this person. Cool. It was fun.
yeah, yeah, it's right. It is such a shame that, right, sex is seen as this thing that you shouldn't do. And so, of course, we have it in our minds as like, okay, we shouldn't do it, so let's do it. And it's so attached to like ideas of, yeah, around purity culture, around like, oh, deep romance, and like you only do it with people that you're super, super, connected with or in love with or whatever. It's like, it's just two people or more. you know, just like having fun. It's just it's just
I feel like comes with friendship, but no one ever talks about that. Like some of the best dates that I've been on have been with my friends. And like I love it when my like best friends from college or best friends that I haven't seen in a while, like they either come up to Philly or like we meet in the middle or whatever. Cause I used to go to college in Boston at Emerson. And so one of my friends were planning to meet in NYC when things like clear up a little bit more. Obviously, we'll see. I feel like there's gonna be a surge. Don't quote me, but I feel like there's gonna be a surge with all these lack of CDC rules. But whenever that clears, like I'm going to see one of my friends. We're gonna meet in New York, and like I know that will be one of the best times because like she's one of my best friends, and I love her. And like she also taught me. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, she taught me about the romance that I also deserve in my partnerships and how my partners should treat me. And then I had another friend that I just saw the other day, the like night before my birthday, and we hung out. It was like one of the best like dates that I've had in a while because like I got to see her and we just like talked for hours in the park. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of romance that comes with friendship, but everyone, especially they write off like woman friendships, which I think are super strong and full of romance, as like, oh, those are just diddly daddly things. These are just diddly daddly friendships or whatever. When no, some of those friendships that I have with the woman, especially the woman of color in my life, have been the deepest, and like so much love within them because my friends call me in when I do something wrong, but they also show me immense amount of love and support me, and then also are there for me when I'm crying over like a breakup or something, because the same best friend from Boston was there when that whole breakup from 2 years ago blew up in my face, and I was like so distraught and sad. So I think there is a lot of romance that people don't talk about in friendship. And like I love holding her hand when I saw her, or like when I've seen her in the past and all. Because I remember there was this one time in college. Maybe it was I think it was also summer 2018. A lot of these stories are from summer 2018. Obviously, that must have been the summer of love for me.
Very formative season for you, yes.
Very formative season for me, looking back. I remember one night we like, I think we clubbed or something, or like went bar hopping or whatever, because like I had just turned 21. We were gonna go to New Orleans or something, or this was after we went to New Orleans for my 21st. And so we just like, she like walked me back home and made sure, and like that I got home and everything. And I'm like, that's romance too. No one talks about that romance.
Oh, I love that you bring that up because yeah, like of course these relationships in which we actually like get deep and we talk and there is all this compassion and care and like actual care that isn't attached to like, oh, maybe if I do this, then there's some sort of transaction that will happen and like then they'll like put out or whatever, or it's like no, it's just for the sake of the connection because like this person is very important to me and so I want to make sure that they're okay. Like, wait, what is more romantic than that?
What's more romantic than making sure that you got back to your dorm okay? Like, I remember that, especially like in college, that was like the thing that my best friend from college would always make sure that I like got back okay, that I like was okay the next day, or if I had a hangover, we would like, or if we both had hangovers, we would make sure like, okay, did we get something to eat? Okay, let's go to the dining hall together. Let's spend time together. Again, people just don't talk about that as much. And I think that there is that in partnership. And also like great friendships are also part of partnership, or like I guess the unseen part of both polyamory, but also just like looking beyond monogamy.
I really like the model of like friendship first dating. I think a lot of the way in which we're kind of taught to date, like we're never explicitly taught, but these kind of notions that we're given is just like, oh, when you go on a date, like, okay, you have goals, you have like, you got to see whether or not this person is marriage material or something, or husband, wife, or a good father or mother. Like, you got to have all these checklists. And like I don't think that's like always bad to like if you do want to like have kids or something, like okay, is this person going to be a good parent or whatever, like to have certain standards, sure, but yeah, they skip the friendship part. They go straight to the okay, how can we build a household together, like what are the logistics of that, but yeah, I feel like you can tell when couples like aren't actually friends. They're just
Mm,
kind of people who are there in the same space.
yeah,
Yeah. Any
roommate,
right,
roommate.
right there. Like they actually are just roommates. Yeah, when you can tell like when couples or groups of partners actually are friends. There's that deeper connection. There's more of an ease. Yeah, it's just so different. It's really night and day. It's
Yeah,
wild.
I think some of the best relationships that I've had started without expectations, where I was just like, oh, well, I'll just be this person's friend. Who knows what the hell will happen? I mean, that's how I got together with my ex-boyfriend, and he was my first love. And I appreciate all the great moments that we have. Then again, he's also a turd ball, but but I still do appreciate those great moments and the like happy, nostalgic moments that we shared together. I'm always gonna appreciate that in like a little part of my heart. But at the end of the day, we were just honestly not aligned with certain things. And also, he's just like a piece of shit for being emotionally abusive and all these like other and sexually coercive. But in the beginning, it was just like literally there was no expectation other than like, oh, you want to hook up? Okay, cool. You seem cool. Cool. Okay, let's just do that. Because honestly, I was just trying to hook up with my ex boyfriend, and he wasn't really like someone that I thought that I was like gonna have a serious relationship with. And then we had a serious relationship for 10 months. Don't regret it. Wouldn't do it again though. Love
Yeah, isn't that a
you.
mood? What a mood. Don't regret it, but wouldn't do it again. Oh man. God, yeah, I feel like we covered a good amount. What words of wisdom would you have for people who are either starting out or have been doing non-monogamy for a while? Like if you could tell, yourself something from 2 or 3 years ago about, your relationship journey, what would you tell yourself?
Put yourself first. I know that sounds cheesy as like fuck, but I think something that I wish I knew 2 years ago was to put my needs first. And like, it's okay to leave a relationship if it's not working. Like, just because you want to be with this person for so long and you love them, that love doesn't outweigh like like how they're treating you, or just like how you feel inside the relationship, and also all these other things. And the like if y'all are aligned, because that's something that I wish 2 years ago I think that I could have heard. And I think now that like helps soothe my soul when I think about that breakup. Because honestly, now I'm like thinking that breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't have been here right now and been as liberated as I am right now. And now in a wonderful, happy, healthy partnership where my needs are getting met and where I'm also still getting to explore myself, and that's honored because my needs are sacred. And I think that's something that little Sydney needed to know. So I'm telling her, like, hey, it's okay to like leave if it's not working. And also to like people, and also it's okay to like not be monogamous. Like, you don't have to be anyone's like, I guess you don't have to fit into other people's expectations. And I think that's also something that I wish I'd known back then, because that connects so much to relationships. Like, no, you can literally just be yourself, or like come back home to yourself. Yeah, I think that's something that I wish 2, 3 years ago, that like I could come back home to myself. And like, and it's okay to be scared of exploring non-monogamy, but also like maybe this is worth exploring. That's something that I also wish I had known, and wish I had heard that someone like told me that it was okay to explore that. Luckily my therapist started telling me that. So that's when it head 2 years ago, like when she started putting the seed in my head, like, oh, even in monogamy there's different relationship structures that can be like really healthy, and that people can still be their own person. Oh. And that's how I kind of started exploring to where the place I am in now, where I'm really exploring it.
Oh, yeah, I love that. No, like it's you put yourself first isn't said enough. Like in a real way, like a compassionate way, not in like a sort of dog eat dog way. I think that's how often like it's like, oh, put yourself first, like step over the competition. I think that's how that's often interpreted or meant. But really, yeah, putting oneself first can be a very compassionate act, and like good boundaries for one is good boundaries for all, for sure. So yeah, I love that.
Great boundaries create really deep, amazing relationships, whether it's in your friendships or it's in like your partnerships or it's in both. Because I feel like friendship is again part of partnership.
And also, yeah, with regard to like work and stuff, like it's right, healthy boundaries are healthy boundaries. Where can people find you? Where can people support you?
So my Patreon starts at $5 a month. I talk about survivor education because it's not fucking censored like on Instagram. So I'm moving all of my work to Patreon. As much as I love IG, I only love it for the reels, to be honest, at this point. So you can find me there. I'm also open up one-on-one coaching. It should be when the video comes out, like this week. One-on-one coaching, and I have 3 private coaching spots for that. So if you're a survivor of color and want support, reach out to me. I'm very excited to see who comes through, because I just feel like there's souls out there, and I'm like, I can't wait to work with these people. I'm also at the end of this month, towards the end of this month, I'm doing a retreat with Ton and Jada called Wet Ass Dreamin'. It's for BIPOC, non-cis men and like women, yeah, femmes, all those types of people to just come and be. And that's on June 27th. The link is in my bio. Oh, you can always just Venmo me. I love Venmo notifications. Or if you're outside of the US, like you're in Canada or something, you can PayPal me. I love those notifications too. And I also have Cash App for, I don't know, people in the UK. I feel like people in the UK use that more.
Yeah, I'll definitely be putting your info in the description.
Will be in the caption too. Love those. That's the way that you can support me. But the most sustainable way is honestly just join my Patreon. Right now we have 5 patrons. We'd love to get to 100 by the end, by like mid-month.
Oh man, oh, amazing. Well, yeah, thank you again so much for your time. Yeah, so much for your insights. I'm really glad we got to chat finally. Thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, again, thank you, Sydney, for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.